to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Hi, welcome back to the RunnerX podcast. I'm Coach Caroline, and I'm here with Coach Valerie. And Coach, we've been getting a lot of questions through our Ask Me Anything that you do on the Wednesday Lives on Facebook. We've been getting YouTube people asking questions. We've been getting people reaching out to our support team about cadence, and that there's a couple of things. So the first question is, what if I can't maintain the 180 cadence?
That's a great question. And I would encourage you guys to have patience in your progress, because the average cadence for most runners is about 160 to 165. So to ask your body to just up to 180, you have to be a little bit patient. So that's number one. But it's also why we give you guys all those elasticity drills. And the second part is you first have to learn how to feel and use the fall.
Right. So that was the second question. Now we had one other person say, okay, I'm great. I'm running at 180, but I'm not getting any faster.
Right. And I'm only laughing because I went through all the same thing. So I got way too caught up, and this is all of us. We really want to run with our legs. And so we're pulling, and you start thinking about pulling, and maybe you're using a metronome and trying to get your foot to pull. And the problem is, guys, we have to learn how to free fall, because that's actually how we accelerate. And the pull is a response to the body falling forward. And what's two things are slowing you down, I guess, if you feel like you're running in place. One is, instead of embracing the fall and falling forward, you are actively pulling your foot up. And in doing so, you're kind of preventing yourself from falling. And a lot of people in the beginning are so used to using their muscles, it's a little bit scary to both free fall and be a little out of control on active muscles.
Okay. So if what I was describing, the person that was asking about how do I get faster, it's because they're not falling. And I think you've said to me before that that active muscle contraction, I'm using my cardiovascular system, right? Because now I'm not having to use my big muscles. I'm not having to use my skeletal system, right? So my heart rate goes up. I start breathing too much.
Right. And that's scary in the beginning. So for a lot of people, their effort has been so much in using their muscles. So they're tired. They get tired when they run.
Yes.
They're fatigued when they run. But it's not so much I'm so winded. I had to stop running because I was winded. Most people, it's I have to stop running because I'm tired. So now all of a sudden they're starting to switch, just like you're saying, I'm using my cardiovascular system, which you should because it's running. So first that's a little bit panicky, right? And the second is I'm trying to fall forward, which I've never done in my life. I've been trying to not fall. So here you've got two things you're trying to do. And all of that gets your heart rate up as well. So I highly suggest, with breathing anyway, doing some breathing exercises when you're not running is so valuable. Just working on deep breaths, 4 or 5 deep breaths, really going sideways instead of up, trying to keep your neck and shoulders relaxed when you breathe, so that when you do fall or when your heart rate does go up, instead of panicking, you just take some deeper breaths. And
that was Exactly. That was the conversation I kind of brought up to them. And I brought up the fact that you and I've talked about this before, that we as humans, as even Americans that don't maybe meditate or do yoga, right? So when we start to fall, we get scared, we do these short, shallow breaths where we're going, instead of these really loud, like you were talking about. If we ever get the recording out there of you running, you're going to be going, taking these big breaths. And that's part of the problem is we do these shallow breaths, we get more scared, our heart rate goes up faster, where if we just breathe deeper, slow down your breath while you're falling, you actually will have a better let go and have that better cardiovascular response, right?
Yes. And I think that people need to get more and more comfortable. If I'm changing my movement, like I'm just getting started on this running, I've never done this before, or I've been running this other way, then give yourself some time to let your heart rate adapt. I mean, instead of worrying about my heart rate's going up, take joy in that. That means you're running and your cardio system's working. Instead, think, okay, I'm going to just breathe more, or I'm going to breathe deeper. Let the breath start to match the run.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good point. So back when I was running more consistently, I used to try to almost run with, granted, I wasn't running with a metronome, but kind of a cadence, sort of like, I haven't given birth, so forgive me, but it was kind of like, in, out, kind of like thinking like Lamaze is the best way I could put it. Would you suggest something like that, where with the cadence, maybe they're getting into some sort of like a meditative breathing state?
Only as a drill, because one of the challenges, and again, great question, and to think about, if I have these drills, like if I have a breathing drill, then during my run, if my breathing is, like you say, if I'm either getting out of breath or something's going on, I can at least go back to that drill, which I highly recommend, and I use it and I teach it. And it's basically because I'm always pulling on the 3 count, up, 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 up. I'll add the exhale, up, 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 exhale. And when people are new and you put the exhale in, it actually helps them relax into their breathing, because now it's part of what I'm doing versus like I'm holding my breath because I'm thinking and I'm trying to pull and all that. But I do want people to let go. Like, we laugh about it, but really, running is the most natural thing, and breathing is the oldest reflex you have. So when you actually just start to fall, and like I said, we start to use those drills to help you relax, you will find naturally that your breath will match your run.
So that brings up 2 questions. The first one is, what if while I'm trying to do all this, I get a side stitch? That pain right underneath, and some people tell you, put your arm up. I've been like, I'll sometimes like grab the bottom right below my rib cage and just try to pierce on it. What do you suggest? Do I stop? What do I do?
I ran a marathon once, and literally mile 1, I got a side stitch. I am not kidding. And that
was going to be 25 miles of hell.
Yeah, of joy. So I literally grabbed just like you said, I grabbed the area, and then runners around me saw that. And I am not kidding. In like 5 seconds, I had 20 people like, exhale every third breath, raise your right hand, like just throwing out all of these things. And they don't know 100% why you get a side stitch, but we know for sure it's something to do with the diaphragm and some kind of spasm. It's like a muscle cramp, side stitch. So then you have to think, okay, I have tension. Just like pain in running is coming from somewhere, if I have a stitch, that's letting me know that I have, I'm either trying to overbreathe, or I might be bending at the waist a little bit and not allowing my muscles to be where they should be. So I recommend first trying to do a exhale, the up, 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 exhale, up, 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 exhale. See if you can breathe through. And that's a really good feeling if you can. And then the other thing is, again, to try to adjust your upper body. Make sure your shoulders are over your hips, and really see if you can, put yourself back in a good pose. And then always, of course, I have no problems with stopping. So if people feel like, I really cannot relax out of it, because like I said, it's usually a spasm in the diaphragm. If you can exhale, a lot of times you can let that go.
Which is a great segue into my second question, which I think we talked about on another podcast, but we talk so much I can't tell what's a podcast and what we've just talked about, is the idea of, okay, I do have a pain, or I do have a spasm, or I do get a little pinch. There are people that say, well, just go start walking, do the walking, do intervals of walking and running. And you can also tell us what you think about kind of that concept. But do you suggest I walk, or do you suggest I actually just stop?
Well, if I was in, so I don't have anything against walking. So there's no, please don't take this in any other way. But if I'm trying to run, then I think we just have to remind ourselves that walking and running are not the same movement. So sometimes if you just switch to walking, you may go back into using your hips and your extenders, and so then it gets harder to want to go back into running. And so let me just say this, if I was like in a race situation, like in my marathon, I didn't want to stop and walk. I really did. By mile 2, I had worked my way out of it. And all I did was just do a 1, 2, 3 exhale, 1, 2, 3 exhale, relax, breathe. But I was fine to keep running. If I really would have had like that sharp stabbing, which I've had, everybody's had, I hope not, but if you've had it, where you really need to stop for a second. If you want to keep moving, keep moving. But if you're wanting to continue running, then I would at least try to walk by doing like small, quick pulls instead of trying to take like, loping strides, if you will. And if I'm out for like a recreational, go out for some exercise and I want to keep moving, sure, absolutely, please walk. And then work on your breathing and then, try to get back into your run. But if it's like a stabbing pain, stop.
Yeah, let's digress for just a second, because I think it's really important when we hear people talk about, well, I'm doing 3 minutes running, 2 minutes walking. And there's nothing, I know you say there's nothing wrong with that, but explain what that does to my psyche, right? With that idea that I only have to run 3 minutes, right? Explain kind of why you don't really like that way of training.
Well, I just feel like it disconnects you from running. So I and what's funny is as you guys know, our RunRx training plans, we really recommend 2 days a week of intervals and 1 day a week of like a longer run. And the reason that I do that is because the more you can run focused on running, then you can run longer. And what I mean by that is when we do our running intervals and we really hold our pose and really hold a good, solid position and focus just on falling and pulling. For most of us, to be fair, trying to really hold that focus is a challenge. And so and if I'm out for a run, what if you're feeling really good? What if you found a fall point and you're connected and you're pulling and your watch goes off and says, oh, no, you've got to walk now. You see, that doesn't make any sense to me. Versus if I'm out running and I feel good and I want to keep going. Or if I'm out running and it doesn't feel good and I need to stop and walk, then stop and walk. Mm-hmm. Own that, and be okay with it. And then think, why did I have to stop and walk? Was it an error in my movement that I could correct? Am I simply fatigued? And then you could have a better conversation instead of telling I feel the same, by the way, with heart rate training. If people instead would connect with running, check what was my heart rate, they will have a better relationship with running overall. If it's the same thing. If I stop and walk every time my heart rate goes up, I'm never going to run.
Right. Well, and that's a good point. That was kind of what I was alluding to, that we had the conversation that I thought was really genius, was the idea that whether you realize it or not, you start to train your mind and the mental side of running to, okay, I can feel this is getting hard. So, oh, good. I'm at my 3 minutes. Right. So you start to kind of train without meaning to, you that's not your intention, right? Your intention is to get your 5 miles in or whatever, but without realizing it, your thoughts are training you to only run for 3 minutes.
Right. And also you're training yourself to want to stop running. I mean,
right.
That's and if you give yourself the freedom of running, and if I need to stop, I stop, it really does. It opens yourself to be able to run.
Right. And that's kind of goes back to what we talk about with everything with the mind. And like, if I think, I'm falling, oh no, instead of I'm falling, wee, you're going to get a better feeling. If I think up instead of push, I'm going to have a lighter feeling. And if I think This is something that it's interesting, just a little side note here before we wrap it up. What you think, if you think running is hard, running will be hard. And what I'm noticing is that if you think running is hard, you'll start finding yourself going, eating right is hard. Getting up in the morning is hard. Being committed to not being on social media is hard. Suddenly everything becomes hard. Where if you say, I'm committed or running is easy, I'm committed to my workouts. I'm committed to taking a break from social media. If you just change your wording and you change your framework, it can change everything. And which is what I love about the RunRx method. That's one of the key things is you will, well, except on the podcast, you won't hear us say land. You won't hear us say push. We say things like up, unweight, light, fall, let go. And it really, I want you guys to try that. Go out for your run today and just think, this is easy. This is fun. I enjoy this, and see how much it changes your run. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week on the RunRx podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.